A man, 46 years old, no violent history, a wife and children. A man who would dress up as Santa Claus at foster homes at Christmas time, all to make children happy. No one could ever believe that this was the same man capable of inflicting so much evil on young women and children over the course of 14 years. Wearing one of the most disturbing, grotesque masks you will ever see, in a nail-studded coat. This is the case of the Beast of Jersey. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you are new here. I hope you're all doing so well. Welcome back to another true crime episode. Oh yeah. If you're new here, hi, my name is Anna. I post true crime content every Wednesday and Sunday. I do true crime and makeup, but today, unfortunately, there will be no doing of the makeup because my beauty room is currently getting rejigged. I don't have any space for my makeup to be out just now, so I am filming in our guest bedroom. I put up a white blind, some fairy lights, and I'm sitting on our little sofa bed. Apologies that there is no makeup in this video, but there will of course be it in other videos, or if you want more chatty sit down videos like this one, let me know. But today, God, we're covering the Beast of Jersey, Edward Paisnel, POS. Tell me why this guy has a disturbing, disgusting, evil, ugly, terrifying mask, but his actual face is even more of a jump scare. Yeah, let's work that out. Unfortunate face, unfortunate looking man, but he's evil, so I guess it matches. But I'm not going to ramble too much today. Just remember everything you need down below: product details, social media handles, email address, case suggestion form. It is all linked down below for you. But without any further rambling and any further ado, let's get into the horrifying case of Edward Paisnel, the Beast of Jersey, who, by the way, absolutely stinks. Now, we will be touching on children.
What?
Oh my god. No, we're not. No. No, we're not. Sorry, that came out very wrong. I meant to say that the case that we're touching on today involves children. No. So Edward Paisnel, where to start, or Paisnel, whatever we're going to call him, right? He was born on May the 7th of 1925, and he was born in the UK. Now, I couldn't exactly pinpoint where in the UK he was located, but the fact that his crimes were committed on the Channel Island of Jersey, which I believe is a channel between England and France, I'm going to assume that he was born somewhere in Jersey. But honestly, I mean, who knows? At the time, this Channel Island of Jersey, it would only have 30,000 residents at the time his crimes were committed. And I always think 30,000 sounds like quite a lot, but apparently it's not. Edward was someone who came from a family of means. It's a family who comes from financial resources. They were actually well off. And as a child, he seemed to be pretty normal. He was quiet, he was shy. He did keep himself to himself, but he had no violent outbursts. There was no alarming behaviour that alarmed his parents, his siblings, or anyone at his school. Weirdly enough, Edward was known to be someone who deeply cared about others. And when the UK had declared war on Germany in 1939, obviously he comes from a family who doesn't know struggle, but when he witnessed others struggling when rationing was brought in, he would actually steal food for starving families and give it to them. And he did this so often that when he got caught, he had to serve a prison sentence. But that was the only crime that he was known for, was for basically being charitable. And listen, I know he's thieving, and I know that's illegal and you should not do that. I'm not promoting stealing, but there was a meaning behind it. He wanted to help people, he wanted to do good, even if that meant getting himself in trouble. And this quality, where the hell did that go? Now, there isn't a whole lot documented about unfortunate faces' early life, childhood and adolescence, but the next thing that we do know for sure is that he would meet his wife Joan in the 1940s. Now, Joan, she was a very wealthy widow. She was someone who was known to do a lot of charity work, a lot of community work, And it was stated again that her and Edward had actually met in these situations, in a charitable community situation. And when we hear what Edward would go on to do and the vicious crimes that he would commit, it's just unimaginable to me to even see this guy in a charitable setting. But then again, John Wayne Gacy was a pillar of the community, and we all know what he was about. Now, Joan had a deep love and a deep care for children, so much so that she opened up a children's home on the Channel Island, and this would house around 60 children who came from a life of struggle. Now, Edward and Joan hit it off right away. They both enjoy the same stuff. It seems like they have the same interests. They want to help people. Sounds great. But no for long. Because even though outwardly Edward seemed like a really charitable, kind, friendly man, Joan thought he was this perfect, idyllic husband who was a pillar of the community, but really he was just the weirdo of the community, unbeknownst to everyone else. So Edward and Joan, they end up getting married in 1959. They had a happy, normal marriage. And it was later stated by Joan that she had absolutely no idea whatsoever what her husband was doing behind her back. And she could never imagine that this man was the Beast of Jersey. Because this man was the kind of husband who she would have go into the children's home dressed up as Santa Claus at Christmas time and make all the children happy. This was the same man that these young children loved so much that they would call him Uncle Ted. They trusted him. They adored him. Again, to Joan, this is the kind of husband that spent his spare time working with charities, working within the community, trying to better things for kids and people within the community. She could never ever imagine that the man that she loved and the man she fell in love with and who she believed he was could be such a disgusting monster. In 1957, there was a young nurse who was only 32 years old waiting on a bus in Montilla Bay. This was an area of the island, quite a small area, and at this point she's waiting for the bus by herself when in the distance she sees this man approaching her. She can't really see too much detail on his face. He's sort of got a scarf up covering most of it. But ultimately this is a safe area, or at least it was, and she thinks nothing of it. And as this man continues walking toward her, she doesn't think anything untoward is going to happen because this man's just getting where he needs to go. She pays no attention to him. But this would be a mistake because this man would approach her, and when he did, he would very quickly beat her over the head to subdue her. He would put a noose around her neck, drag her into a field and brutally rape her. Not only this, he had also brutally beaten this young woman, so much so that she had to get so many stitches. And when this evil monster was finished with this woman, he just fled the scene, leaving her to bleed out, leaving her in complete shock and terror. And luckily for this nurse, there was a local person who was walking nearby this field and they seen her, and they immediately got her the medical attention that she required. And although she would quickly heal from these injuries, although they were something that would clear up in a couple of weeks and a couple of months, the mental scars and the emotional damage that was done to her, this is something that would not heal. This is something that she would live with for the rest of her life. Then in March of 1957, we've got a 20-year-old woman who is walking home from the bus stop. She's on her way home from work. She's by herself when this evil man would attack her. And what he did to his previous victim basically became his MO. He bet this woman over the head, put a noose around her neck, dragged her into a nearby field, brutally bet and raped her. Again, fleeing the scene as soon as he was finished, just leaving her there like she was nothing, like she meant nothing. Then in July of 1957, there would be another young woman who was only 31 years old who would experience that very same attack. After her attack, however, there seemed to be a bit of a break. This man, this serial assaulter, this serial rapist, took a bit of time off. And the next assault would not take place until October of 1959. So what is that, like a 2-year break? Less than 2 years, kind of? Oh wait. No, more than 2 years. My math is like god awful. But this attack in October of 1959 was exactly the same as the woman prior, and this was done on a 28-year-old woman who was left with so much mental trauma. So victims of these attacks, they come forward to the police, they give their statement, they try and describe the man as best as they can. They say that he was in his mid to late 40s and he was around 5'6" in height. They said that he had this Irish accent that they were pretty sure was fake because it sounded so terrible. Now, all of these women's statements and descriptions were so eerily similar, even down to how this man smelled. And he smelled. Each individual victim had claimed that this man smelled very musty, fusty, minging, like he needed a good wash, as though he had not bathed in a very, very long time. And I mean, how embarrassing. How embarrassing is it to be this like serial assaulter, attacker, rapist, and you absolutely reek? Get a life and take a bath. Now, once the police had all the statements from these young women, they had all agreed that all of these victims had definitely been attacked by the same man. And I think the thing that really gave it away that it was the same guy was the musty smell. So a statement would be released to the press, obviously telling women to stay vigilant, look after themselves, look out for each other. And this is when the press dubbed him the Beast of Jersey, feeding that ego even more. So now they have this like smelly attacker's MO. They had told the women that anytime they're outside their homes, they need to be extra vigilant, take extra care, just really be on the ball, be on the lookout for anything that doesn't look right, and don't travel alone if you can help it. But what the police and what the public could never have anticipated was this musty smell was soon going to waft into their homes. So then in 1960, this evil, musty, ugly looking cretin of a man, he decides that he's going to change up his MO, keep people on their toes. And he decides that instead of attacking and targeting women on the streets at bus stops on their way home, he's just going to start breaking into their houses and either assaulting them in there or taking them from their houses to a different location. And then on February the 14th of 1960, the Beast of Jersey, he would break into a home, into an upstairs bedroom, and this would be the bedroom of a 12-year-old boy. A little boy. And of course, I do not want anyone being a victim of this man, but he's been attacking women all the way up to this point. You would expect that he would leave the little boy alone and go find a woman in the house. But he doesn't. This little boy would wake up in the middle of the night and see a dark figure standing at the end of his bed. But instead of it being a bad dream, it was a real life nightmare. There was a masked man standing at the end of his bed, shining a torch in his face, blinding his vision. And this little boy was completely frozen in terror. And before he even got the chance to come around and shouting his mum or shouting his dad, the Beast of Jersey had placed a noose around his neck, took him out of his home to a nearby field, and he raped this 12-year-old boy. And when this terrifying and horrifying ordeal was over, this monster then walked this little boy back to his home and disappeared. Like, he walked this little boy back home to his front doorstep after he has just brutally raped him. I don't understand it. I don't understand why he would commit such a brutal attack but then want to make sure the little boy gets home. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, obviously I'm glad the little boy got home. I'm glad this little boy lived. But I just can't understand what was going on in Edward Paisnel's mind. Then in March of the same year, there was a young woman who was on her way to the bus stop. She was going for a bus to travel to her work when she would stop and speak to a man who pulled up in his vehicle and offered her a lift. Before this woman could say no, this man told her He was a doctor and he was on his way to pick up his wife. Two things that would make anyone feel a bit safer and a bit more secure. And unfortunately this would work. The young woman accepted the lift from him, she got into his car and they took off driving. Now when she entered the car, it was dark. She had barely even seen what this man looked like, and it wouldn't be until she turned to speak to him in the vehicle that she would face this disgusting, ugly creep. When she looked at him, she noticed that he was wearing this really big, oversized, like did not fit him overcoat. He had on gloves and he was covering up his face. She could not make out any identifying features. And at this point, the woman realises that she's made a mistake that could potentially be fatal. But at this point, it's too late because this man has already driven her to a very secluded part of the island. And once they're there, this is when he would launch his attack on her. He brutally punched her in the face, again subduing her, tied her hands behind her back, dragged her into a nearby field, and proceeded to rape her. Once he was finished, he then places the woman back in the vehicle. This time her hands are free, and while she's sitting there whilst he's driving, she realises anything could happen next. Is this man going to let her live and potentially tell someone what's happened to her, leading him to be imprisoned? Or was he going to kill her? But this young woman obviously had absolutely no desire of waiting round and finding out. So because her hands were free, she opened the passenger side door and she threw herself from the vehicle and just started screaming at the top of her lungs. She was screaming help, she was screaming what's happened to her, and this freaked out the man enough that he just sped off in the car and left her lying in the middle of the road. It's just so horrifying to think of anyone in that situation and going through something so evil and unimaginable. Now later that same month, there was a 43-year-old woman and her 14-year-old daughter asleep at night in their cottage in a quiet area of St Martin's. It's just them two in the house that evening in the safety and comfort of their own home. They could never imagine what would happen to them. So just before midnight, the mother, she would be woken up when the phone started ringing downstairs. And you know what it's like if you get a phone call in the middle of the night? Well, my immediate response is who's dead? Who's died? What's happened? Like, I think the absolute worst. And this woman was kind of the same. It was unlike anyone to phone at that time, so she was worried. She goes downstairs and answers the phone. But when she answers it, it's just silence on the other end. And then there's a click and then the dial tone. Like someone had been silent on the other end of the call and just hung up. It's weird, it's a bit strange, but she decides it's the middle of the night, I'm going to go back to bed. So this woman, she's back in bed, she is trying to fall asleep again, and the phone goes again. And listen, if it was me, I would kind of be feeling like, I'm not answering the phone to you if you're just going to ignore me again. But this woman, she kind of panics, why would someone phone twice? She decides she's going to go down the stairs, answer the phone, see who it is, see what the big deal is and why are you calling at this hour?
Why are you calling at this ungodly hour?
So she heads downstairs to check and she turns the lights on so she can see. But when she reaches the bottom of these stairs, someone else turns the lights off from down below in the house. And she very quickly realises that she is not alone and it is not her daughter. Someone was standing in the middle of this woman's living room in the dead of night, and she jumps into action. She is, thinking like, what can I do? Runs over to the phone, picks up the phone to dial 999. But when she holds the phone up, it's completely dead. This person had cut the phone line, and the reason that he had called her home was to check if her phone worked. And when she answered and he found out that it did work, he knew he had to cut the line. So this dark figure then lunges at this woman, grabs her, is demanding money, is threatening to kill her if she doesn't comply. And this is when the 14-year-old daughter wakes up, hearing all the chaos, and comes downstairs. The minute this masked evil monster sees this 14-year-old girl standing on the stairs, he immediately lets go of the mother, pushes her away, and he runs toward the 14-year-old girl, chasing her up the stairs. The mum at this point, she knows that she can't take on this man herself. She runs to a neighbour's house, she gets help, she gets someone to come over, help her get this intruder away from her daughter. But when she returns to the home, they would find her daughter alone. She was terrified, she was sobbing, she was completely in shock, she was tied up. And that's when they find out that this man had brutally raped her. This 14-year-old girl, during the night in her own home, is just so evil. Then in April, another 14-year-old girl would wake up to find this masked man standing in her room. And this little girl, she immediately starts screaming, she's pounding on the wall, she's trying to get the attention of her mum and dad. And she kicked up such a fuss that this cretin, this weirdo who was scared of getting in trouble, immediately fled. And then in July, there was an 8-year-old little boy asleep in his bed, and this absolute POS, he snuck into this little boy's bedroom, he kidnapped him from the comfort and safety of his own bed, put a noose around his neck, took him to a field, and brutally raped him. After this horrific, terrifying, disgusting rape that had taken place, he then walks this little boy back home, delivers him on his doorstep, and then takes off. The pain that all of these victims and the terror that they must have been in, I don't even want to imagine it. How they would survive this and come through the other end is just strength that I will never be able to understand. Now, this assault on this 8-year-old little boy, that would be the final assault that would occur this year. Investigators at this point, they start feeling the pressure from the public. There's an outrage because why can't you catch this man? Why aren't you able to do anything? Why can't you protect us, protect the community? And rightly so, right? Because the pressure should be piled on. Something has to be done. These people were living in fear, not only on the streets, but in their own homes, and no one was safe because this guy was clearly targeting anyone who he came across, apart from men. He was too scared to face men, but women and children, yeah. Now the police, when they're really delving into this case, they decide that the Beast of Jersey must be a local resident. He seemed to know his way about the island, he knew the secluded areas, and the frequency of the attacks couldn't be done by someone who wasn't local. So with this, the police decide they need to start looking at every man that already holds a criminal record. So they interview a lot of men. Okay, there's too many people out there with a really bad criminal record. They interview them all. But they decide that the description and the profile didn't fit any of them. So then they decide what they're going to do is request the fingerprints of every man on the Channel Island and try and roll them out that way. Now, it was your right to refuse this. If you didn't want to give your fingerprints, you didn't have to. And 13 people refused. And one of them was Edward Paisnel. I wonder why. Why, Eddie? Why don't you want to give your prints? Oh, it's because you're guilty? Of course, Edward Paisnel, the actual criminal, he hasn't given his fingerprints. So the police are like, you know, God, I mean, the pressure's really piling up here. People are starting to get really angry. We're going to just start grasping at straws and point our finger at whoever it lands on. They decide that they're going to arrest this man who was known to be the strange fisherman. Now, the only reason he was deemed as being strange is because he was quite eccentric. God forbid you have a personality. This man was Alphonse Legasteloi, and he would be heavily interrogated by the police. I mean, they were using some tactics on him to really try and break him down. But after 14 hours of questioning, they realised they had nothing on this man. There was no evidence. There was nothing pointing toward him apart from the fact that he was eccentric. So after they had finished the 14-hour grueling questioning with this man, he would be released. But that didn't matter, because the local people had been given his name. They knew his face. His face had been released in the press alongside his name. Everyone knew who this man was. And this witch hunt would take place. Angry mobs would gather at Alfonsi's home. They were throwing bricks, they were trying to do his windows in, they were shouting trying to get him out, and they even burned his house down. And of course this man, this innocent man, had no option but to leave his home and flee the island, a place that he had called home for so long. Then in February of 1961, the attacks would start up again. But this time, the man decided he was only targeting children. Women, they were off the table now. He only wanted the kids. And by April of this very year, 3 children had been taken from their homes and brutally raped. At this point, local police, they actually feel like they can't do anything. They almost admit defeat, and they bring in Scotland Yard to try and help out. Scotland Yard, they take over, they look at the case, and they decide that, people need to be vigilant. They need to set up neighbourhood watches to look after each other. They say to look out for each other, look out for anyone who might be approaching a neighbour's home. Keep your doors locked, keep them barricaded, don't invite in strangers, just do whatever you can to keep yourself safe, because they couldn't. In Scotland Yard, they would also sort of conjure up their own profile of who they believed the Beast of Jersey to be, and they had said that he was 40 to 45 years old, approximately 5'6" in height, medium build. They believed that he knew the island well, especially the East Coast area. They said that he had a moustache but covered his face either with a scarf or a mask during the attacks. He wore a long, dark, musty coat. I think that's just his smell, but we'll blame it on the coat. He wore a hat, a pair of gloves. He entered the homes through bedroom windows. He said he would use the moon as his light, and the attacks and entrances to the home would be anywhere between 10 and 3 a.m. And also, the man carried a torch. And I read the profile, and it's great that they're trying to help. But have you really told us any other information than what we already knew? I don't think so. Even with their own profile and believing that they're getting steps closer to catching the serial rapist, they still had absolutely no luck whatsoever. And the search would stop for a few years. How can you stop searching? There is a monster out there who is hurting anyone that they can find, and especially children, and you're just going to stop searching for them. Make that make sense. So then 2 years later, in April of 1963, a 9-year-old boy, he would be taken from his home, a noose around his neck, led to a field and raped by this evil monster before being returned home. The same would happen again in November when an 11-year-old boy was taken. And then in July of 1964, a 10-year-old girl and a 10-year-old boy, they would also suffer through the same horrific attack. And then the Beast of Jersey decided he was going to take a 2-year break. He needed a vacation, like business has been busy and he needs a break from it all. So he takes this break and he almost gives these people a sense of safety, security. They stop the neighbourhood watch, they finally feel safe to go to sleep at night. And then in 1966, he would send a horrifying letter to the police. And I'm going to read this letter to you, but this guy's grammar is far from good. I mean, mine's is not perfect by any means, don't get me wrong, but this, I read it and I was kind of like, oh, how do I make sense of it? So I've tried to write it down in a way that I can better divulge. So his letter said, "My dear sir, I think that it is just a time to tell you that you are just wasting your time. As every time I have done what I always intended to do, and remember, it will not stop at this." Please, can you write in actual sentences? "But I will be fair to you and give you a chance. I have never had much out of this life, but I intend to get everything I can now. I have always wanted to do the perfect crime. I have done this, but this time, let the moon shine very bright." And I'm sorry, but he spelled bright Britte. Embarrassing. But this time, let the moon shine very bright in September, because this time it must be perfect. Not one, but two. I am not a maniac by a long shot, but I like to play with you people. You will hear from me before September, and I will give you all the clues, just to see if you can catch me. Yours very sincerely, wait and see. I've read more effective letters for these kind of people. There was so many times it never really makes sense, but he's trying his best. So then, August of 1966, a 15-year-old girl would be brutally raped and attacked in her own home. There was something about this attack, though, that was very slightly different to the rest of them. When this young girl had went to hospital, it revealed long scratches covering all over her body, and the scratches seemed to be evenly placed and very parallel. And after this attack, where things had changed up a bit, there would be no further assaults for 4 years. False safety, false security, when will he strike? People still living in fear because he's already came back after a 2-year period. What's to stop him after 4? And in August of 1970, this is exactly what the beast did. He would return. A 14-year-old little boy would wake up in the middle of the night and they would see a masked figure standing at the foot of their bed, shining a torch in their face. And as always, this man had placed a noose around this young boy's neck, took him out of his home to a nearby field where he raped him, and then proceeded to walk him home after. But again, there was something slightly different in this case. The beast, had actually spoken to this young boy and told him to stay quiet, otherwise someone would come and harm his mother and father. And when the boy's parents found him in their home, dishevelled, upset, in shock, frozen in complete terror, they asked him what happened. Did someone do something to you? And the little boy said that there was nothing wrong. But thankfully, he would eventually tell his parents the horrific attack that he had suffered, and they immediately took him to the hospital to get treatment for any injuries. And lo and behold, guess what he had all over his body, just like we seen with one girl prior? The long parallel scratches covering his entire body, but especially his torso. When this young boy had spoken to the police, he had told them that the man who had taken him and raped him was wearing a really spiky, black, dishevelled wig, looked like it hadn't been washed, shock, and also a terrifying mask. Police are very quickly realising that this evil monster, he is escalating, because now it's scratches all over their body alongside the beatings and the rapes. What was it going to be next? Would he escalate further? Would it be possible that he might start stabbing his victims, that he might start murdering his victims? They couldn't let it get to that. It had already gone too far. And you will be so glad to know that we are now at the point where we're finally getting into the downfall of this horrific, stinking, ugly, unfortunate-faced monster. So it was July the 10th of 1970 and 2 police are working their regular patrol. So they're driving along, checking the streets, making sure nothing bad's going on, and they would come to a red light. Whilst they're sitting at this red light, a red light that you're meant to stop for, suddenly a Morris vehicle just straight cuts through the red light. He was not stopping for love nor money, must think he's above the law, and immediately the officers spring into action because you're endangering people's lives. If you don't stop at a stoplight, anything could happen. Road accidents, pedestrians, it could all just go bad so quick. When they're chasing down the driver of this vehicle, this driver is not willing to pull over. Instead, they are speeding, like trying to weave throughout the streets. But luckily, this guy was a very, very terrible driver. He wound up on the wrong side of the road, then he crashed into a bush and somehow wound up in a tomato field. Now, once the vehicle comes to a stop in the tomato field, the driver then gets out and tries to, hightail it, run on foot. The police, they chase after him on foot as well. The man, he's not exactly Mo Farah, he's not an athlete by any means, and he wasn't getting anywhere quick, let's just say. So the police, they immediately tackle him to the ground and arrest him. Then when they're driving to the police station, right, they've got the guy in the back, two of them in the front, and they kind of look at each other like this. Sniffing. Like, what is that? Do you smell that smell? And that's when they both say, oh, there's a really weird, musty, fusty, dusty, weird smell in this vehicle. And they realise it's coming from him. It's coming from the guy in the back. He smells musty, dusty, crusty. And when they get to the police station, they take this man into a room where they would finally get a good look at him. And this man was Edward Paisnel. They examine this man and they see that he is wearing a very large black overcoat. It has inch-long nails sticking out of the cuff, the collar, the shoulders. Then when they empty his pockets, they find a black, almost like a torch that's been covered with black tape. And then the glass of the torch where the light comes out, that's also been covered in black tape, only leaving a pinprick of light. They also found 2 pieces of long cord that, you could tie someone up with, a wool cap and duct tape. Very suspicious combo. And they're both just sitting there with chronic resting suspicious face because why does this guy have this weird stuff? And then they would find a black dishevelled spiky wig and a horrifying mask, just like the victims had described. So police then ask him, why are you wearing this costume, this outfit, and why the hell were you speeding so fast? The man then tells the police that the costume, the wig, the mask, everything, this was because he was going to an orgy and he was going to be late. Can't be late to an orgy, God forbid. And he was basically concealing his identity because he didn't want anyone to recognise him because he had a wife at home. Then they say to him, right, okay, that's fine. What about the inch nails sticking out all over your jacket? He says, this is in case anyone in the orgy knows martial arts. Why just martial arts? What if they're just a good fighter in general? The mask and the wig, however, these were off limits. He did not want to talk about his mask and wig. Absolutely not. He adored them. Now, Edward, he would be remanded in custody and the police, they got permission to go and search his home. And this is where they really realise stuff.
I've got stuff out here.
So when conducting the search of his home, they would find a secret room inside his bedroom. It was like a locked door led to a secret room. And inside this secret room, they would find a shrine to Satan. Police said that this little chamber reeked of must. They found old clothes. They also found loads of different wigs with matching fake bushy eyebrows. This man is literally creating weaves and matching eyebrows in his secret room in his bedroom. Why are some of these people such crafty little bitches? Who's got time? Not only this, but police would find photographs of different houses located all across the Channel Island, and this is when they realise this sick, ugly, smelly freak has been planning this for years. When Edward was confronted with the camera, with the photos, he realises it's time to give up the ghost. I might as well just come forward and tell you my whole life story and what I've done and the POS that I actually am. He confirms to police that he would pick and choose his victims, the homes, years prior. Maybe not always as long before the attack as that, but in a lot of cases he had stalked these victims, learned their routines. He would even try and watch to find out which bedroom which person went into. This is why he was able to get into the houses and wind up directly in the bedrooms of his wanted victims. And they talked to him about this shrine to Satan, which, by the way, had an altar, a sword, and an extensive collection of old books on the occult and black magic. And listen, you can be interested in all of that and still be a good person. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying if you're interested in that you're a killer. Edward, of course, like he's given himself up. He goes to trial, and on November the 29th of 1971, it would take the jury 38 minutes to find him guilty on 13 separate counts. These counts included the rape, sodomy, and indecent assault of 6 of his victims. Now, he would be sentenced to 30 years inside Winchester Prison, and I was disgusted to hear that this man was released after 20 years in 1991 on good behaviour. This man has raped, assaulted and terrorised an entire community. He's targeted children, young women, some vulnerable people. He has changed their lives forever. And he gets out after 20 years for good behaviour. Where's the justice? Now, this absolute freak, asswipe, weirdo, he had the cheek that when he left prison, when he was released, he actually tried to go back to Jersey to live a normal life. And the people were like, are you shitting me? You think you're going to come back to the town that you terrorised? Face the victims that you terrorised? Absolutely not. And they basically ran him out of town. So he then moved over to the Isle of Wight, but thankfully in 1994, this sick, evil, twisted freak who absolutely stunk would finally die of a heart attack. I wish it was like tortured but at least he's dead. Yay. And I just hope and pray that the victims of this case have been able to find peace, have been able to find their safety and trust people again, because what they went through is just so emotionally terrifying and disturbing and horrific, and the strength that they have to move on from that. I'm just so in awe of their strength and ability to live as normal a life as they possibly can, and I truly hope that they thrive and that they are able to emotionally recover from what this evil asshole put them through. But my loves, that is it for today's episode. I really hope this one was interesting to you. I hope it was maybe new for some of you, and if it wasn't a new case to you, then hopefully I had some new details. If you do enjoy my content, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you do not miss when I upload every Wednesday and Sunday. Any details you need regarding me, myself and I, social media handles, my email address, what else have I got? Case suggestion document. Just anything that you need, it will be listed down below for you. Let me know your thoughts on this monster down below. Let me know if you know any other details about this case. Let me know what case you want me to cover next. Sorry I wasn't doing my makeup today, I promise I will get back to that. I'm just reorganising, rejigging some stuff around. But that is it for today. Please remember, be a good person, do not be a bad person, stay safe, look after each other, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!